मैडम की अनुमति हो तो हम लोग प्रारंभ कर सकते हैं।
जी।
और लोग धीरे धीरे जुड़ते जाएंगे। इसमें हम लोग समझते हैं कि 100 से अधिक लोगों ने रजिस्ट्रेशन कराया है।
जी। जी।
और क्योंकि आज पहला दिन है, इसलिए समय लग सकता है लोगों को जुड़ने में।
जी
तो
जरूर।
मैडम की अनुमति से यह कार्य, हमारे जीतू भाई भी इसमें जुड़ करके अपना दो शब्द, ये प्रारंभ में अगर नहीं जुड़ेंगे तो अंत में उनका हम लोग उद्बोधन लेंगे।
जी। जी।
और जो भी हमारे प्रतिभागी हैं, मैं उनका बहुत बहुत हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ। उसके साथ ही मैं सबसे अधिक स्वागत तो अपनी मैडम पवन जैन का कर रहा हूँ, कि कितने उत्साह पूर्वक वो अपने ज्ञान को दान कर रही हैं। पिछले वर्ष भी उन्होंने भारतीय मंदिरों का जो स्थापत्य कला है उस पर बहुत ही विस्तार से, सूक्ष्म रूप से उस पर प्रकाश डाला था। और इनके द्वारा जो प्रस्तुत मंदिरों के चित्र थे, वो कितने परिश्रम साध्य थे, वो जिन लोगों ने देखे होंगे वो समझ सकते हैं। और मुझे लगता है कि उसी उत्साह को देखते हुए हम लोगों का मन कर गया कि मैडम का फिर से हम लोग जैन पेंटिंग्स पर उद्बोधन सुने। जो भी हमारे प्रतिभागी हैं, निश्चित रूप से उनको लाभ होगा। मैं उन सब प्रतिभागियों का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि भोगीलाल लहरचंदन इंस्टीट्यूट जो है हमारा, वो दिल्ली में स्थित है। यह जीटी करनाल रोड में स्थित है। भोगीलाल लहरचंद इंस्टीट्यूट प्राच्य विद्याओं के लिए समर्पित संस्थान है। हमारे यहाँ मुख्य रूप से जो प्राचीन पांडुलिपियां हैं उनका संरक्षण किया जाता है। और जैसा कि सामान्य रूप से पांडुलिपियों का महत्व तो है ही, लेकिन जो भोगीलाल रहचंद इंस्टीट्यूट में पांडुलिपियां हैं उनका विशेष महत्व है। क्योंकि विभाजन के बाद जो हमारे भारत की पांडुलिपियां पाकिस्तान में रह गई थी, उनको 1954 में लाया गया था। और वह पांडुलिपियां हमारे भोगीलाल लहरचंद इंस्टीट्यूट में सुरक्षित हैं। हम लोग इनका संरक्षण करते हैं और उसका प्रकाशन भी करते हैं। इन पांडुलिपियों में संस्कृत, प्राकृत की अधिक पांडुलिपियां हैं। संस्कृत में भी सभी विधाओं की पांडुलिपियां हैं। ज्योतिष, व्याकरण, साहित्य, इतिहास आदि। तो इस तरह से आयुर्वेद की भी हजारों की संख्या में पांडुलिपियां हैं, जिसमें देश विदेश के लोग आकर के उनका उपयोग करते हैं। इसी तरह से यहाँ पर गुरुमुखी में और ये राजस्थानी भाषा आदि में भी इन पांडुलिपियां, हमारे यहाँ शारदा लिपि में गुरुमुखी के साथ में कुछ अरबी पर्शियन की भी हमारे यहाँ कुछ पांडुलिपियां हैं। तो यह हम लोगों ने एक बृहद योजना ली है, जिसके अंतर्गत हम लोग अभी 2 साल में जैसे 25 पांडुलिपियों का प्रकाशन करने की योजना बना रहे हैं। इसी तरह से तत्वार सूत्र की हम लोग एक कार्यशाला करते हैं, और प्राकृत की एक ग्रीष्मकालीन कार्यशाला करते हैं जो मई जून में होती है। और 1 महीने तक हम उनको आवास की सुविधा देते हैं। और निःशुल्क ही उनको पूरी व्यवस्थाएं की जाती हैं। एसी रूम, शेयर बेस पर यहाँ पर व्यवस्थाएं होती हैं। तो इन दो के साथ में हमारे यहाँ जैन कला पर प्रतिवर्ष अच्छे से अच्छे व्याख्यान होते हैं। इसमें मैडम डॉक्टर पवन जी का भी व्याख्यान हो चुका है। और जो हमारी हस्तियां हैं, अच्छी अच्छी जो कला की प्रमुख विद्वजन हैं, उनके हम लोग व्याख्यान सुन चुके हैं। तो इस तरह से भोगीलाल लहरचंद इंस्टीट्यूट विभिन्न योजनाओं के साथ में प्राच्य विद्याओं के लिए समर्पित संस्थान है। उसी क्रम में, जैसा कि पिछले वर्ष हम लोगों ने मंदिर स्थापत्य कला, भारत की संपूर्ण मंदिरों का दिग्दर्शन किया था। पूर्ण सूक्ष्म रूप से भी किया गया था और दिग्दर्शन भी किया गया था। क्योंकि 16 या कितने लेक्चर में, व्याख्यान में, तो उनको पूरी तरह से तो नहीं समावेश कर सकते हैं। लेकिन मैडम के व्याख्यान सुनने के बाद एक जिज्ञासा जरूर सबको पैदा हुई होगी कि इतने अभूतपूर्व मंदिर हैं तो उनके हम दर्शन करें। और जिन लोगों ने दर्शन कर भी लिए थे, उनको दूसरी बार दर्शन करने का सोचेंगे। क्योंकि वो समझ नहीं सकते थे। एक बार जब आप किसी मंदिर में दर्शन करने जाते हैं तो उनकी जो कलात्मक विशेषताएं हैं वो हम सामान्य जन नहीं समझ सकते हैं, लेकिन इस तरह के जब हम व्याख्यान सुन लेते हैं और फिर दूसरी बार इन मंदिरों में जाते हैं तब हम उनका महत्व समझ लेते हैं। जैसा कि हम लोग जानते हैं कि गाइड का जैसे महत्व होता है कि सामान्य रूप से कहीं भी अगर हम लोग जाते हैं पुरातत्व में केंद्रों में तो उतना ज्ञान हम लोग बाह्य दृष्टि से नहीं समझ सकते हैं, और विशेषज्ञों के माध्यम से हम उसको बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से समझ सकते हैं। तो आज सभी लोग समझ रहे हैं कि चित्रकला का कितना महत्व है। जो ज्ञान हमको मूक वाणी के माध्यम से, यानी चित्र वस्तुतः नहीं बोलता है लेकिन चित्र की विशेषता होती है कि वो बोलता है, पूरा अपनी वस्तुस्थिति का ज्ञान करा देता है। तो ऐसे चित्रकला, जैन चित्रकला पर तो इसका विशेष महत्व इसलिए है कि जब हम लोग इतिहास के ग्रंथ पढ़ते हैं जैन चित्रकला के, तो उल्लेख बहुत प्राप्त होता है कि प्रारंभिक 6वीं शताब्दी से जैन चित्रकलाओं से चित्रकला का विकास होता है। लेकिन इतिहास में जो महत्व प्राप्त होना चाहिए था उस रूप में हमको इनका महत्व नहीं प्राप्त होता है। लेकिन मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि जब हमारे इतिहासविद, हमारे अध्येता मैडम के इन व्याख्यानों को सुनेंगे तो निश्चित रूप से इनका उल्लेख करेंगे, लोगों की जिज्ञासा होगी, लोग शोध की ओर प्रवृत्त होंगे। तो इन्हीं के शब्दों के साथ में मैं डॉक्टर पवन जैन जी का संक्षेप में परिचय आप लोगों को कराना चाहूंगा कि डॉक्टर पवन जैन जी ये आर्ट हिस्टोरियन, क्यूरेटर, टेक्सटाइल डिजाइनर एंड इंटरप्रेटर। She specialized in Jain art and architecture. She has taught at the National Museum, National Museum Institute, BL Institute of Indology, NIFT, etc. Courses such as Jain art, Hindu temple architecture, comparative aesthetics, world culture, etc. She has given talk at various institutes such as the Kiran Nodar Museum of Art, etc. She has authored 2 books on Jain art and textiles, Kaivalyam, Jain manuscript paintings in the National Museum. After curating the exhibition Chitram Vastram, a journey of textile and sartorial styles through Jain manuscript paintings in the National Museum. She published a book of the same name. She has participated in various seminars, has written several papers in art, history, journal, and bulletins. She is the co-founder of 2 successful textile, printing, and handloom ventures. यह आपका अत्यंत संक्षिप्त परिचय है, लेकिन जब हम उनका व्याख्यान सुनेंगे तो उसका हम उनकी विद्वता का अच्छी तरह से जान पाएंगे। तो इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ आज हम मैडम का व्याख्यान प्रारंभ करते हैं, और जीतू भाई जैसे ही जुड़ेंगे तो हम अंत में उनका उद्बोधन लेना चाहेंगे। हमारे जो भी प्रतिभागी जन हैं वो आखिरी में अपने जिज्ञासा और प्रश्न रख सकते हैं। अगर हम इस श्रृंखला में मान लीजिए पहले श्रृंखला में नहीं रख सकते, वो क्वेश्चन उनके समावेश नहीं कर पाएंगे, तो अगली श्रृंखला में भी क्रम से उनका समावेश करते रहेंगे। तो एक और बात कहना ये थी कि अभी इन 16 व्याख्यानों में जो लोग सम्मिलित होंगे पूरी तरह से उनको हम लोग सर्टिफिकेट भी इश्यू करेंगे। तो मैं सबसे यही निवेदन करता हूँ कि नियमित रूप से इन व्याख्यानों को सुने, अभी भी अपने मित्रों से भी कहें, और वो अभी भी रजिस्ट्रेशन करेंगे तो हम लोग उनको स्वीकार करेंगे। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं मैडम से गुजारिश करता हूँ कि वो अपनी पेंटिंग्स पर आज हमारा प्रथम व्याख्यान दे करके हम सबको उपकृत करें। मैडम
थैंक यू सर, बड़ा जेनरस आपने इंट्रोडक्शन दिया है। आई होप आई एम एबल टू लिव अप टू दिस एक्सपेक्टेशन। थैंक यू वंस अगेन। तो मैं शेयर करूंगी अपना स्क्रीन। आपको सबको स्क्रीन दिखाई दे रहा है मेरा, है ना?
जी जी, दिखाई दे रहा है जी, आवाज भी आ रही है, दिखाई भी दे रहा है जी।
जी, ठीक है। ओके। सो हम आज बहुत कुछ जैन पेंटिंग्स के बारे में नहीं जानेंगे, पहले हम इसके बैकग्राउंड के बारे में जानेंगे आज के लेक्चर में ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा। सो फ्रॉम द सेकेंड टू द 8th century, we all know Jainism spread, in fact, in popularity across the Indian subcontinent, and especially between 9th and 11th centuries, it flourished in Western India, especially Gujarat. And in fact, at that time, we know that region of Gujarat extended to the areas of Rajasthan and Maharashtra also, which are present today. And this is where Jainism finally got its established a stronghold, I would say, which kind of and started dictating its artistic trends in religious and in secular spheres. Yeah. And the Jain kings, we all know of the Chalukyan dynasties. They were who ruled Gujarat from and much of Rajasthan and Malwa from the 10th century to late 13th century. They were great, or I will say energetic patrons, right, of Jain art, and they built a lot of temples at that time, and of course a lot of Jain bhandars or libraries हम जिनको बोलते हैं. Special mention आता है King Kumarpal, who happened in 12th century. In fact, he commissioned and distributed hundreds of copies of Kalp Sutra. We all know Kalp Sutra, the Shwetambar text, and of course, we will talk about it later in a great detail. Commissioned and distributed hundreds of copies of this Kalp Sutra, and was also instrumental in founding 21 libraries in his capital city of Patan alone, besides, in other cities, right? And of course, in later centuries, from we get evidence from the colophon. Colophon is the last page of a manuscript, right? So from the colophon, we learn that it was mostly the middle class, mainly the merchants and traders who actually commissioned lot of manuscripts, and they gave lot of donations for the making of these manuscripts. Also between the two sects, the Digambars and the Shwetambars. Of course, the Shwetambars were more prolific in commissioning of these manuscripts. And though, of course, we do find Digambar manuscripts also. When I say here manuscripts, we are mostly concerned with illustrated manuscripts, okay, because we are learning about the Jain paintings, okay. Of course, you will find immense number of manuscripts otherwise, but I am talking about the illustrations where we find paintings, okay. So most of these illustrated Jain manuscripts were originally located in Jain Bhandars, as I told you earlier. But now they are preserved in various museums in nationally and internationally, outside India also. And of course, there are few in private collection. Okay, right. So before we embark on this journey, let us devote just some very little time to understand the religion as such, right? And it is only after that we will be able to appreciate the very nuances of the paintings, and also we'll be able to put them in the right perspective, right? So we are looking at on screen the two timelines. Mahavir, we assign this timeline to him, 599 to 527 BC, and Buddha to 563, almost contemporary to each other, right? So both these religions, Shramanic religions, besides other Ajivikas and others also, they actually came about as a reaction or as a response to the then very prevalent Brahminical tradition, which was, very popular at that time. So the Brahminical tradition basically represented Vedic orthodoxy. We all know that. They believed in sacrificial rituals, the yajna, the centrality of Brahminic, priestly functions. the caste system, the Varna system, Vyavastha jisko hum kehte hain. So they were all rooted in these, philosophies. On the other side, the Shramanical tradition that we talk about, the say Buddhist or Jainism, they actually maintained quite opposite principles to what I have just said. They rejected all these sacrifices, and of course the Varna Vyavastha or caste system also, and uh, also they kind of did not accept the supremacy of the Brahmins, right? That's why we know that all the Tirthankars have to be born in a Kshatriya family. And what did they believe in? They celebrated the monastic ideal and also the very notion of spiritual virtuosity. That's what, both these religions came into being, believing these things. The very name Jainism comes from Jina, meaning a conqueror or liberator. So I will say Jain philosophical system is uh, very pragmatic, बहुत practical है in its approach. It neither demands, unquestioning faith in divine power, nor is it very different from, our everyday life. So I will say more than a religion, Jainism is an ethical practice, right? And which has asceticism or austere practices at its core. And it believes in 24 jinas or tirthankars. And because they defeated ignorance, karmic bondage, and that's how they are known as the conquerors or the jinas, people who follow them are the Jains, like some of us who are present. So historically, we agree that Jainism was founded by Mahavir, the 24th Tirthankar. So when I say 24th Tirthankar, and I say it was started, so there is already an anomaly in my statement, because as Jains, we say that he was the 24th, the last Tirthankar of this age. Okay. But there are historical evidences that it was he who kind of started, he kind of orderly started this particular religion and originated almost around the same time as Buddhism. Parshvanath, the 23rd Tirthankar, we know he organized the Shramanic order in 9th century BC. And beyond that, actually, the history of other Tirthankars is kind of mostly it is the myths and legends that we hear about them, like the Neminath, the 22nd Tirthankar, is the cousin of Krishna, or Adinath, the very first Tirthankar. And sometimes we also equate him to Shiva. I mean, sometimes the Indus Valley seal of Pashupatinath, we equate that to Adinath also. The three jewels, the three Ratnas or the Ratnatraya as we call them, Samyak Darshan Gyan Charitrani Moksha Margaha, which is the right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct. These are the ways to moksha, right? And these are also comparable to the three jewels that we have in Buddhism. I think I don't need to tell you about that. Okay. Then the very basic mantra in Jainism, we have the Namokar mantra, which simply serves as a gesture of deep respect towards beings they believe are more spiritually advanced, and to remind followers of the Jain religion of their ultimate goal of attaining nirvana or moksha. So basically, in this mantra, we as Jains, we salute the souls that have obtained liberation or on their path to attaining so. So we have Arihants, the Siddhas, the Acharyas, Upadhyayas, and the Sadhus, etc. Okay. Then we have to attain moksha. First, I talked about the three ratnas. I talked about the, other austerities. And so how do you attain this? So Jains are supposed to follow a certain code of conduct, right? The Jain code of conduct is made up of these 5 vows: Satya, Ahimsa, Aparigraha, Asteya, Brahmacharya, and all of their logical conclusions also, so that one can get liberated from all the karmic bondages. strict vegetarianism, I will say, emerges from ahimsa, which is the mainstay of Jainism. Also, abstaining from food after sunset is also an extension of the same, I will say. Okay. So these are the, of course, the 24 Tirthankars that we believe in. And as I said, Jainism does not believe in Almighty God or Supreme Being, but only 24 Tirthankars, those enlightened ones. And each of whom was originally a man like you and me, and who nevertheless, by their own power, attained omniscience and freedom, and who, out of pity for suffering of mankind, they teach, the teach the mankind the way of salvation that he was able to find. So who is a Tirthankara? Basically, they are called the ford makers who make the fjord, the long, narrow passage of sea between two cliffs. That's the definition of fjord. So they make the way from the phenomenal world, which is the sansar, across the ocean of suffering to moksha or liberation. Through their intense ascetic practice, the Tirthankars have attained the four infinite qualities, which are knowledge, vision, bliss, and energy. All Tirthankars are represented exactly in the same way with their uh, lakshan or lanchan, as we call them, or cognizances at the center of the throne or the pedestal, or where they are seated or they are standing. And we all know all the Tirthankars are shown or represented only in two postures, whether it will be sitting in meditation in Padmasana, or they are standing in Kayotsarga Mudra, and we will talk about this later. So this is the list of the 24 Tirthankars. Now it's also important to learn about some symbols in Jainism, which we may encounter during our, course of learning about this, about Jain paintings. So swastik we are looking at, derived from the Sanskrit word swasti, well-being. The word itself connotes good, beneficial, auspicious, considered highly lucky. The four arms of the swastik they correspond to the four possible states of existence, or as जिनको हम गति बोलते हैं, in the world of rebirth, the devas, manushas, narki jeev, and triyanchas, or animals, plants, and microorganisms. It actually represents the perpetual nature of the universe in the ever-changing, in the material world, where a creature is destined to one of these four states that I spoke about just now. In contrast to this circle of rebirth and delusion, it is the concept of a straight path, which is constituted by, of course, the three ratnas I just spoke about. So these three dots correspond to those three ratnas, Samyak Darshan, Gyan, Charitra. All right. And sometimes these four dots also represent the Jain Sangha, the four parts of the Jain Sangha, the munis, the nuns, the male, shravaks, and the shravikas. That's also sometimes, it is represented. And the crescent moon, of course, is the Siddhashila on which the ultimately people or the Tirthankars who have attained moksha, they go and this is their permanent abode, and this is the sign of the Tirthankar sitting on the Siddhashila at the top. Okay. Then we come to this. The symbol of the hand shows a fearlessness and symbolizes the feeling of ahimsa towards all the creatures in the world. We all know Gio or Gino, though, this very message. The circle in the middle of the hand symbolizes this world or the sansar, and the 24 spokes that we see in the wheel, they represent the preachings of 24 Tirthankars, which can be used to liberate a soul from the cycle of rebirth. The Jain emblem is, here if you see this side, this outline, right, it corresponds to the very shape of the universe, right, which represents the three realms or the three lokas, and of course I will elaborate upon this. as we get closer to that subject. And the meaning of this mantra that you see here at the bottom, so Paraspar Upgraho Jivana. What does it mean? All life is bound together by mutual support and interdependence. So, in short, the Jain emblem represents many important concepts to show the path to enlightenment by following the basic principles of Ahimsa, the Ratnatraya, and Paraspar Upgraho Jivana. That's the basic concept of this. Then we look at the Jain flags. Many a times you may have seen this flag fluttering on the, shikhars of the Jain temples, or the dhwaj as we call it. These five colors represent the Panch Parmeshthis that we just spoke about, whom we salute through the Namokar mantra, and the five vows, small as well as great ones, the five vows that I spoke about, Satya, Ahimsa, Steya, that. So white represents the Arihantas, souls who have conquered all passions like anger, attachment, aversions, and have attained omniscience and eternal bliss through self-realization. It also represents or denotes peace or ahimsa, non-violence. Then we come to next color, which is red. It represents the siddhas, souls that have attained salvation and truth. It also denotes truthfulness or satya. Yellow represents the acharyas, the masters of perfection. The color also stands for acharya or asteya or non-stealing. Green represents the upadhyayas, the adepts who um, teach scriptures to monks. It also signifies chastity or brahmacharya. Dark blue represents the sadhus and sadhvis or monks and nuns. It also signifies non-possession or aparigraha. It is also believed that the complexion or the color of all the 24 Tirthankars was one of these five colors. For instance, Chandra Prabhu and Pushpadant were white, Munisubrat and Nemanath were blue or dark color, dark blue color. Padma Prabhu and Vasu Puja were red. Mallinath and Parshnath were green or dark green. And while the remaining were kind of golden or yellowish in color. Then this symbol you may have seen right now also you have on your screen. This is the emblem of BLII that you can see here, or Shrutna Ratnakar for that matter. So this is the basically Om is written here, and it is considered as a condensed form of reference to the Panch Parmeshthis again. One syllable short form of the initials of the five Parmeshthis, Arihantas, Ashariras, Acharya, Upadhyaya or Muni. The Om symbol is also used in ancient Jain scriptures to represent the 5 lines of the Navkar mantra, which is the most important part of the daily prayer in the Jain religion. So I have already told you this, the Navkar mantra honors the Panch Parmeshthri. Then the Srivatsa symbol that we often see here, and here you can see and on the chest of Mahavir here. So Srivatsa is a diamond-shaped mark on the chest of the Jinas. It is often visible on sculptures or paintings of the Jinas. It is slightly different from pure swastik, although some also loosely sometimes they end up calling it that. It is one of the also Ashtamangals or the 8 auspicial symbols found in Jainism. The canonical texts like the Trishashti Shalak Purush of Hemchandra and Acharya Jinsen's Mahapuran, they mention it as one of the Ashtamangalas in these texts. Acharya Dinkar, authored by Vardhaman Suri, he explains in his work that the highest knowledge which emerged from the heart of Tirthankar in the form of Srivatsa, so they are marked as such. Okay, that's where. So this is also considered as the highest seat of knowledge. That's from the chest that it appeared. In North Indian Jain sculptures of the early centuries, it is marked in the center of the chest. Then this is, I'm talking about this particular, everybody can follow my cursor, I hope. So amongst the most memorable Jain symbols is the Sthapnacharya, a stand for holy scriptures, which a Jain monk keeps before him while giving discourses. It not only symbolizes the presence and reverence for one's teacher, but also the respect Jains show for their holy scriptures. And they give significant importance to teachers and knowledge. This in turn implies immense importance of religious texts and manuscripts to the extent that manuscripts and the stand on which they are kept, Stapnacharya, are objects of veneration. या उनकी भी पूजा की जाती है ना. Jain devotees built many bhandars or libraries to house these texts. And this is the reason that today uh, so many of us can, so many of these manuscripts have survived, and we can study these because they are in such good shape even now. So, speaking of image worship, I will say since there is no creator or God that we have in Jain philosophy, and strictly speaking, the image worship is not absolutely necessary for the attainment of emancipation. It is the bhav worship, na, the mental attitude, and not dravya worship. Physical worship or idol worship, that really matters. Just doesn't matter, because Jain worship is therefore regarded as a worship not of a godhead or a deity, but of a human being who has reached perfection of the soul, freed from all bondages. And again, I will, make a distinction here. It is not a hero worship. Why do I say that? Because, in its usual sense, because what we are worshipping are the aggregate qualities of the perfect man, of the Tirthankar, of the liberated soul that we remember and adore, and we want to develop in our own self by worshipping the idol of the Jinnah. Then we talk about this is the Siddha Chakra or the Nav Pada. Siddha refers to a liberated soul, while Chakra means wheel. So it is believed that worshipping a Siddha Chakra results in freedom from the cycles of life within a universal wheel known as the Nirvana. It also means circle of perfection. Navpad means 9 petals in reference to the center of the yantra that we are looking at, while Nav Devta means 9 deities. Okay, so the saint's wheel, also it is called, embodies the essence of the Jain religious teachings. Its purpose is for the worship of the 9 most important padas or dignities of Jainism. These include, of course, the Panch Parmeshthis and the fourfold religion, or sometimes Panch Parmeshthis and the Three Ratnas. Sometimes also the uh, fourth factor, which is the tap, also sometimes is included in these 9 padas, which is the samyak tap, also sometimes they call it. Yeah. Okay. This is a very interesting concept, very exclusive to only Jain religion. And this is such an evolved or highly scientific, I would say, way of venerating somebody you adore. It's called the Siddha Pratima, or a magical diagram depicting a perfect being. So a liberated soul who has transcended his body or corporeal form, and its resultant karmic obligation is represented like this as a bodiless silhouette. है ना? So this bodiless or formless silhouette symbolizing his transcendence. मतलब वो बहुत ऊपर उठ गए हैं of this bodily form and its all associated karmas. Such a representation is one of the highest expressions of Jain spiritual detachment from desire, I would say that. Okay. Then these are some of the Ashtmangal symbols in Shwetambar's sect. We may, find that. And the Achar Dinkar, Shwetambar text of the 14th century, also attempts to explain the very conception which is behind each of these symbols. And according to it, the mirror actually is for seeing one's true self. The Bhadrasana is, we can travel eyes from one, this, three, four, like this. Bhadrasana is worshipped as it is sanctified by the feet of the blessed God. The Vardhamanaka is suggestive of increase of wealth, fame, merit, etc. The Kalash is worshipped because of the plenitude or fullness of life. The pair of fish, the symbol of Cupid's banner, is said to come to worship the Jinnah who has defeated all kinds of passion. And Srivatsa, I have already told you, the highest knowledge has manifested itself from the heart of the Jinnah in the form of the Srivatsa mark on his chest. Then swastik, also I have spoken according to this text, signifies swasti or shanti or peace. And Nandaivarta diagram with its 9 points stands for the 9 nidhis or the 9 treasures. So those were the Shwetambar Ashtmangals. Now you're looking at the Digambar Ashtmangals. Gives very slight different set of Ashtmangals. The Bringar, which is a type of a vessel, Kalash, Darpan, Chamar, Dhwaja, Vyajna is a fan, Chhatra, the parasol, Supratishtha, and Swastik, or, these are the 8 symbols. So now the question is, besides this, what are there other differences between Digambars and Shwetambars? I would say some minor and some major differences, but besides that, they follow the same kind of philosophy, I would say. Nudity is one of the basic, I would say, uh, reason also for the separation of the two in the two different sects. It's a must for salvation for the Digambars, but Shwetambars wear white clothes. We all know that. Digambar sect claims that the female body is not capable of attaining moksha, whereas Shwetambars think otherwise. And I will also discuss this later when we come to this point later in one of the lectures. Then Garbha Kalyanak of Mahavir. There is some debate about that. Shwetambars believe in the story of transfer of embryo of Mahavir from Brahmani Devnanda's womb to Kshatrani Trishla's womb. And as I mentioned earlier, because the religion came about as a response or a reaction to Brahmanism, they always wanted to put Kshatriyas on above the Brahmins. And that's why it is said that the Tirthankar has to be born in a Kshatriya family. Shwetambars believe that, and for this very reason, there is also a story behind this. Shwetambars believe that Mahavir took the vow of renunciation or he did not take to the spiritual path while his parents were alive, while Digambars believe the other way. Digambar's sect also asserts that every Tirthankar, after obtaining omniscience or Keval Gyan, becomes totally free from any biological processes and functions such as hunger, thirst, sleep, perspiration, and age. But Shwetambars, I will say it's more pragmatic and practical, and they disagree with the Digambars and contend that even in the Kevali state, the exalted one is required to obey all the bodily laws, eat ordinary food, and engage in physical activities. Then, after having attained Keval Gyan, when Tirthankar is delivering his sermon in the Samvasaran, according to Digambars, this discourse takes the form of a Divya Dhvani, which is a monotone and the sound of Om, and this is only understood by the chief disciples or the Gandhars of the Tirthankar, and then they are able to translate it into sutra form. The Shwetambars declare that the Jinnah speaks in a language which is universally understood by the Devas, mankind, and animals from all regions who are present there. In this context, the role of the Gandhars would not be that of a translator, but just of compilers of the Jinnah's teachings. Then we have Jivan Swami images of Mahavir in Shwetambars, fully dressed in a prince's attire. Mahavir's image is worshipped, in this form, performing meditation before renouncing the world. So many such images we find in the in the Mahavir temple in Oshiaji. Then we just saw the differences between Ashtamangals, and then also the auspicious dreams that the Tirthankar's mother sees uh, when she conceives the Tirthankar. So Shwetambars believe they are 14 auspicious dreams, whereas the Digambars feel that they are uh, 16 auspicious dreams. Okay. So now with this, we have concluded whatever about the religion I had to say, and we are going to talk about Jain paintings now. They are also commonly known as the Gujarati or the Western Indian school of painting. Why? Because that's where they originated, and that's where they prospered the maximum. So amongst the areas of philanthropy identified in Jain ethical texts, highest priority was given to the commissioning of images of Jinas, or the support of temples, and the funding of the scripts or making of the manuscripts. Support came from wealthy Jain, laities, principally merchants who prospered from the trade. We all know about the ancient the port which was present right from the Sindhu Saraswati civilization in Gujarat, and that lot of trade flowed through Gujarat from the coastal ports to the inlands of northern India. So the development of manuscripts is believed to owe much to the institutions of Jain Bhandars that I've spoken about. And people who were managing all these large donations, they were called the Bhattaraks. And they they took care of these donations and administration of the temples and related areas. And they, in close contact with the laity, began encouraging donations for idol worship and manuscripts for spiritual enlightenment. And termed it as a Shastradan. Okay. Then the devotees, in fact, often had manuscripts copied for different centers and sometimes had them decorated with paintings or illustrations. Commissioning of a manuscript was always a sacred task. It was never undertaken for any personal whims. Oh, because I like it or because I'm going to keep a copy for myself. It was only to be recited inside the temple for the general public. Okay. An enormous number of Jain religious manuscripts were commissioned from the 12th to 16th centuries by the princes, their ministers, and the rich Jain merchants for earning religious merit. Yeah, पुण्य कमाने के लिए ना. So some notable examples where we find these manuscripts today, illustrated manuscripts, are some of the bhandars which are still functioning in Gujarat, Ahmedabad, and the areas like Devsanupad, then Kailash Sagar Gyan Mandir, Koba. Then we have the LD Institute of Indology, Hemchandra Jain Gyan Mandir at Patan, Shantinath Bhandar at Cambay, then Jain Shwetambar Gyan Mandir at Chani, Baroda, Jain Bhandar at Jaisalmer also. And then some of the museums, National Museum in Delhi, the Bombay Museum, the Prince of Wales is not the old name. Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum has a whole lot of these. Then Bharat Kala Bhavan, etc. They are also housed outside India in, say, V&A Museum, British Library in London, Met Museum in New York, Boston Museum, University of Virginia, Philadelphia, and there are few private collectors also who have these illustrated manuscripts. So let's talk about history of Jain paintings. Where did it all start? So the very first literary evidence कि हमें किस text में इसका वर्णन मिलता है is the Jain painting in the 11th century CE is a reference in the Parshcharita chapter 6 to a image of Jinnah Nemi, which is painted on the wall. So this is a literary evidence. किताबों हमें मिलता है. But archaeologists have found extensive rock-hewn, caves with relief sculptures. Some of them have, remnants, या उसमें कुछ color बचा हुआ है, of paintings dating from the 1st century BC, in Udaygiri Khandgiri caves in Odisha, almost in the, inside the city of Bhubaneswar. Then what we are looking at are the murals or the wall paintings inside the Jain caves from Sitanvasal near Trichinapalli in South India, dating back to 7th century CE, which are almost comparable with Ajanta murals. You can see the sinuous lines, the rotundity, the shading, etc. Right? And there are different layers of paintings which are found there. The ducks, fish, and other aquatic beings that we see here are perfect examples of the painter's study of their form, movement, life, and habits. Here, I want to also make a point that there is an intimate relationship between the swan and the lotus stem. We find a lot of imagery in, Indian stock. So swan, we all know, या हंस feeds on the milky sap, या जो दूध या stem में से निकलता है, जो liquid निकलता है, it feeds on that, the milky sap which is present. The moment it kind of punctures the stem, the sap flows out and gets mixed into the water. And it is only swan which has this discretion that it is able to differentiate what it needs, that's the milky sap, and take that, leaving away what it does not need, which is water, right? So इसी को हम नीर क्षीर विवेक भी कहते हैं संस्कृत में, कि somebody who has this kind of discrete understanding, right? And we will find lot of textiles. You will find this kind of motif where swan is, holding a lotus stem in its beak. So this comparison is actually very appropriate. Without becoming a swan or a paramhans, one cannot enter into the network of the lotus feet of the divine, it is said. Some more paintings from there. Yeah. Here you see the flower gatherers, which are portrayed in very, very elegant postures and proportions, very elegant, almost comparable to the Ajanta paintings that we see. And there is a great charm, I would say, in their faces. The stalks of the lotuses that they carry, that you see here, as the petals of the, these blooming flowers, and the birds are very, very realistically depicted here. Then we move forward in history. These are the wall paintings in Jain caves at Ellora, date back to the 8th and 11th centuries. Now, we don't see that kind of fineness that we saw in earlier paintings, because they were almost comparable to Ajanta paintings. But here we see some kind of folkish tradition which has come into being. In the 8th century Kailashnath temple at Ellora, there are different layers of paintings, one about the other, belonging to different periods. Here we see women carrying water pitchers, या घड़े सिर पर रख करके आ रही हैं to welcome the Jain monk here, who is sitting on a palanquin, right? And they are welcoming this with all this pomp and show here. This is on the western porch of the Kailashnath temple. Almost a similar painting is seen on the Kasht Pattikas, or the wooden patli. We'll talk about these manuscript covers later. It's from Jaisalmer Bhandar, belonging to early part of the 12th century. This actually depicts an actual historic event about the debate between the two Jain monks, one Shwetambar and one Digambar, that took place, and of course we'll talk about it later also. So the tradition of Jain miniatures is as old as the Buddhist art and developed under similar conditions. The school of Buddhist Pal paintings heavily influenced the Jain manuscript paintings, and in terms of the material, the format, and subject matter also. And it is Jainism which kept alive this artistic tradition, and that flowered from Buddhism and integrated into newer art forms that we will see now during the course. So Jain miniature paintings executed as illustrations in manuscripts belong to this very rich tradition. But Jain art, like Jain literature, also developed its own distinctive presence, both in its iconography and in its stylistic character. So in the earliest extent Jain manuscript paintings, the depictions of the deities, like this one here, served as a talismanic or magical religious purpose. And it was not for narration of the story, or it did not have a relationship with the text which is there. So what we are looking at is a Buddhist enlargement of the previous manuscript, Tara you find here. And this is also Tara on the in the Alchi monastery. Why I'm showing you this? Because here you see this very feature of Jain paintings, of, as we call it, the further eye. The second eye in the 3/4 profile, it's almost hanging as if in the mid-air. Okay. So how it is, the question comes that how it is that Jain religion has survived on Indian soil when other non-Vedic Shraman traditions have not, despite all the adversities and opposing forces. It is to be seen how Jains have struggled to survive as an institution and also for the attainment of their spiritual goals. So the number one, I will say, it is the supremacy of the Kshatriyas, and hence they got lot of royal patronage. Their allegiance we know, Siddha Sen with and Kumar Pal with him, Chandracharya, Amogh Varsha with Jin Sen, Chamund Rai, who was instrumental in making the great monolith in South India, Bahubali. Then the Hoysala dynasty, the very story about their birth is about the Jain monks Sudatta and the Sala, which was the original of their kingdom. King Shrenik was converted to Jainism, and after Ajatashatru, the Nandas were of Magadha Jains. Following that, Chandragupta Maurya was the disciple of Bhadrabahu. During times of Ashok, the Jain monks started moving along the two great caravan routes, northwest towards Delhi, Mathura, and west through Saurashtra and into Gujarat, and east coast southward into Kalinga, finally reaching the Dravidian shores. Shungas were, Brahminical in their faith, and it was not a very good time at that time for other religions. Mathura in later time became the very seat of all the three religions. King Kanishka was, although he was a Buddhist, but was sympathetic towards the non-Brahminic religions also. In Vallabhi, which served as the primary location where the Jain teachings were, disseminated, Jain canons were first put into writing forms. So this was along the political climate I spoke about. Then second point is inclusion of members of all societies. I would say that all communities, especially the merchant class, since the main centers were along the trade routes. Then Jain Acharyas created works for lay devotees or the sansaris, or for lay conduct, right? Nothing of this was introduced by Buddhists. So we all know that there are different rules that apply to Grahast and somebody who has taken who has kind of renounced this world. Then Buddhist monks were also tucked away in monasteries. Jain monks and nuns were more in close contact with the laity, and there was a complete integration which prevailed in Jainism. Then Jain Acharyas, this is very important, took a balance, they struck a good balance between the perpetuation orthodoxy and need for a fruitful intercourse, I would say, with Hindu society. This came in three ways: adopting local customs, instituting new set of kriyas, reinventing the caste system by Acharya Jinsen in Adi Puran during the Rashtrakuta period. Then Jain integration of the Hindu sanskars also, that various, the birth, marriage, thereby at least striking some surface similarity with the Hindus, reducing the intercommunal friction. Jain integration of Hindu deities, which we will encounter in many paintings. And most important will be, I will say, the Anekant attitude, the philosophy, which believes in various point of views are relative and to any situation or truth, and that insistence on any one is the only and absolute point of view is inconsistent with reality. It is not true. And looking at reality from all possibilities and which is explained in through two different things like this Nyayavad and the Syadvad. Due to these reasons, I will say many people uh, ask as to are Jains really Hindus? So, I will say if one is open to more multidimensional Anekantvad approach, it is yes and no, because from one point of view, we can say yes, because we follow a lot of same kind of rituals and deities, etc. But definitely, we differ a lot at the philosophical level. Okay. So Shwetambar manuscripts, of course, outnumbered the Digambar manuscripts. And because they were more, Shwetambars were more oriented towards this form of religious expression than the other communities. The Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, none of them can singly or even collectively match the prolific output of the Shwetambars in this respect. Aside from the divergence in the number of manuscripts, the Shwetambars and Digambars also differ a lot in the texts or the granth that they chose to illustrate or the painting. The lives of the Tirthankar, it was a popular theme with both. Shwetambars generally drew upon Kalpasutra and the Digambars on the Mahapuran. Both sects illustrated Dharmakathas. The Shwetambars illustrate the Uttar Adhya and Sutra, while the Digambars do the Yashodhar Charit. And also repeatedly these, texts were illustrated and, commissioned. Like any other sect also, like amongst Hindus, Bal Gopal Stuti, Ramayana, repeatedly they are being commissioned and illustrated. Or say Sikandar Nama, Hamza Nama amongst the Muslim traditions. So miniature paintings of the period that we are most concerned about from 1100 to 1800 CE can be categorized into three stylistic idioms. The first are, of course, the Jain paintings, also called the Western Indian or the Gujarati paintings. Other secular paintings like the Vasant Vilas, the Brahminic texts like the Bal Gopal Suti, executed in the same style as that of Western Indian or Gujarati paintings. It's very important to stress one point here that these paintings are very, very hieratic in nature, where the importance is given to the teachings and beliefs of the religion, and any aestheticity or beauty that we encounter or we see is only very incidental, right? So it's more like a script or pictographic that we have the Jain paintings, the way they are illustrated. Okay. Yeah. So the second half of the 15th century, these I'm trying to show you other sects or secular paintings which were done in a similar style of Jain paintings, which we will talk about the typical characteristics of Jain paintings, the further eye, the pointed nose, the 3/4 profile, etc., etc. So the Vaishnavas also adopted the same Western Indian technique of painting. Some of the books like the Bal Gopal Stuti here, or the Vasant Vilas, which is a manuscript of a poem which is set in Fagun, the month of spring. It describes the love between husband and wife. All right. It is one of the best secular works, and you will see here. If I didn't tell you, and if you could not read the text, you could easily mistake it for a Jain painting here, right? You will find similar figures, similar clothing, furnishings, outdoors, indoors, etc. Very, very similar to Jain paintings. Okay. And I showed you the Buddhist painting also earlier in the on the Alchi murals. Yeah. So while Jain artists adhered to the strict norms of the manuscript paintings, other schools moved away and brought in some kind of lyricism, some kind of rhythm and sensitivity in the art. So this is the Chaur Panchashika group. And in this group, we have other illustrated manuscripts also, like the Bhagavad Puran, Brigavat, Nimatnama, Geet Govind, Chandayan, etc. Some Ragmala paintings also we find, Rasmanjari of Bhanudat, Rasik Priya, etc. of Keshav Das also. Then, of course, finally, we have the later part of the era is come the Mughal paintings with its sophistication and realism, balance, an eye for perspective, tonality in shades, imparting, a lot of depth and rotundity, and lot of emphasis on outdoor and indoors spaces. The influence of Mughal paintings, in fact, was the last influence that we have on Jain paintings. And after that, the very tradition of Jain paintings came to a halt. I think with this, I'm going to end today's lecture. And yes, and I'm open to any kind of comments or observations or, yeah, whatever that you want to share. Yes. Or
हम
any
लोग सभी,
questions.
जी,
Yeah.
मैडम, मैं सभी प्रतिभागियों की तरफ से आपके प्रति हार्दिक कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करता हूं कि आपने भूमिका में पेंटिंग के साथ में संपूर्ण जैन संस्कृति का भी प्रतिपादन कर दिया है सूत्र रूप से। और निश्चित रूप से अभी हमारे पास उस तरह के कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं आए हैं। एक सभी लोगों ने थैंक्स और वो नमस्कार और इस तरह से किया है।
या कोई
तो हम,
ऑब्जर्वेशन भी हो या आपका अपना इनपुट आप देना चाहते हैं, इट विल बी रियली
तो
नाइस।
अभी तो इस तरह से नहीं आया है, मुझे लगता है धीरे धीरे लोग जैसे समझेंगे। तो मैं अपने श्रोताओं से यही कहना चाहता हूँ कि अभी आप लोग इसी तरह से जुड़े रहिए, और अगला जो सत्र होगा उसमें बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण आपने गागर में सागर भरने का प्रयास किया है, क्योंकि 16 एपिसोड के माध्यम से इतनी संपूर्ण चित्रकला को दिखाना कोई आसान काम नहीं है। तो आपने इसमें कुछ एक क्वेश्चन है, इफ यू हैव एनी कमेंट्स क्वेश्चंस यू कैन रेज। हाँ, ठीक, उस तरह से कोई मुझे मार्केबल कोई
आई
कमेंट्स।
आई सी वन हियर।
अच्छा, वो आप देख लीजिए। हाँ, कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो देख लीजिए।
मेरे में नेम सेक हैं पवन जैन जी। यस, है ना? ठीक है, आप अनम्यूट करिए सर अपने आप को और बताइए।
जी पवन जी, कृपया अनम्यूट कीजिए।
जी जी जी।
आपका ये जो मैंने स्क्रिप्ट का ये देखा, मैंने बहुत अच्छा लगा मुझे।
थैंक यू।
और आपके ये कितने 16 सेक्शन हुए कि फर्स्ट है, कैसा है?
ये फर्स्ट है सर।
तो 16 ये इस जूम पे कंटिन्यू होगा?
जी जी जी।
तो इसमें कुछ हमारे, हम स्वाध्याय का ग्रुप है हमारा, एक 200 लोगों का है।
जी
हाँ, तो पंकज शाह बोल के है हमारे पुणे की, मैं पुणे से बात कर रहा हूँ।
जी
तो उसमें 200 लोग जुड़ते हैं, दोपहर में होता है स्वाध्याय।
जी।
अगर आप ये लिंक मुझे व्हाट्सएप पे देंगे और परमिशन देंगे तो मैं वो हमका जो स्वाध्याय देते हैं उनको शेयर करके वो ग्रुप में शेयर कर सकता हूँ।
जी आप सर से।
यस, आप शेयर करिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है मुझे, हमारी संस्था को कोई दिक्कत
नहीं, ये मेल पे आया है ना, तो वो मेरे को यानी
नहीं। यूट्यूब के माध्यम से आप इसको शेयर कर सकते हैं, यूट्यूब में भी आएगा, ये यूट्यूब में भी रहेगा।
और
आप इसको,
ऐसे अभी पुणे यूनिवर्सिटी में भी हमने एक 5 दिन का सेमिनार रखा है। जो
जी
अपने
जी
मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट है वो कैसे रीड की जाए,
जी
उसके
जी
अंदर का
जी।
शब्द क्या है, मीनिंग क्या है, उसके लिए अभी 18 तारीख से है, मंडे से। तो
अभी
पवन
तो
कुमार।
आपका ये हमारा पेंटिंग पर स्पेशली है, और आप अपने साथियों को शेयर करना चाहें तो उनसे कहिए रजिस्ट्रेशन भी करके वो 7 बजे जुड़ सकते हैं सीधे, उससे
नहीं,
सीधा
वो
फायदा।
वो ग्रुप में क्या है, मोस्टली सीनियर सिटीजन है। और स्वाध्याय में वो सब दोपहर में समय रहता है तो बैठते भी है।
हाँ, तो आप यूट्यूब के माध्यम से उसको से वो कर
तो वो
सकते हैं।
उनको एक जो हैबिट हो गई है ना, कि वो उनके व्हाट्सएप पे
जी,
वो ना जूम का लिंक सेव है, बस वो जाके मोबाइल पे क्लिक करते हैं और ज्वाइन कर लेते। बाकी उनको
नहीं, हम
यूट्यूब
लोग
क्या है, ये
भी
फंक्शन उनको नहीं पता है।
आप सुनिए, रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाइए और रिक्वेस्ट कीजिए, हम वो भी प्रयास कर सकते हैं, उस पर भी विचार करेंगे।
हाँ, अगर आपका इसका व्हाट्सएप के ग्रुप का अगर ये होता है वो
अभी
ग्रुप में
हुआ
शेयर
नहीं
कर
है,
दूंगा।
लेकिन आप पहले रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाइए और रिक्वेस्ट भेजिए कि कौन लोग इस तरह से, तो उसका भी हम इंतजाम करेंगे। ठीक है, तो मैं अभी सभी प्रतिभागियों को सूचना, अभी अभी और कोई कुछ रेज करना चाहते हैं क्या?
हाँ हाँ, मोहित जैन जी हैं।
हाँ मोहित जी क्या कहना चाहते हैं? अनम्यूट हुए हैं क्या अनम्यूट मोहित जी?
अनम्यूट करिए सर। जी जी बताइए।
सर्वप्रथम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम, आपका बहुत अच्छा सेशन रहा। मैं भी मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पर ही वर्क करता हूं, तो मुझे ये जानना है कि ये मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पर जो पेंटिंग होती हैं, तो ये इसका उद्भव कब से हुआ, और दूसरी चीज ये सिर्फ कागज पे ही होती थी या फिर वस्त्रों आदि पर भी बनाते थे? जैसे अभी आपने ताड़पत्र की एक वो दिखाई प्रत, तो उस पर भी बहुत अच्छी मैंने उसका स्क्रीनशॉट लिया। तो
सो
ऐसी
आज
कब?
आज हमारा पहला सेशन है। ये
जी जी।
सारे क्वेश्चन प्रश्न आपके
अगले अगले
खुद ब खुद आंसर हो जाएंगे जैसे जैसे हम प्रोग्रेस करेंगे इस कोर्स में, है ना।
जी
ठीक है,
जी मैम।
पत्रों पर भी होती है, कपड़ों पर
और
भी
है
होती है, बड़े बड़े कैनवसेस पे भी, लेकिन मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पेंटिंग्स जो है ताड़पत्र और पेपर पर होती है ज्यादातर। पहले
जी,
ताड़पत्र पे होती
तो
थी, अब बाद में
ये
पेपर।
ये
पेंटिंग का
स्वर्ण।
जो है, ये पेंटिंग
हाँ
का
जी।
जो चलन है, ये बीसी में ही प्रारंभ हो गया था? जो आपने 565 बीसी की वो दिखाई गौतम बुद्ध की और वो भगवान महावीर स्वामी की, तब से ही प्रारंभ हो गया था या और पहले से?
बीसी की मैंने एक भी नहीं दिखाई आपको।
वो शुरुआत में आपने कुछ बताया था वो
उल्लेख किया है खाली।
नहीं, वो मैंने सीई आफ्टर दिस करंट इरा वाली दिखाई थी मैंने, जो
जी जी।
दीवारों पे लगी हुई है वो 7th सेंचुरी सीई। फिर उसके बाद 8th to 11th सेंचुरी एलोरा पेंटिंग्स। फिर
हाँ
जो
हाँ, वो तो।
मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट ट्रेडिशन है वो एंड ऑफ ऑलमोस्ट 11th सेंचुरी ऑनवर्ड्स टू 18th सेंचुरी। हाँ,
जी
बीसी
जी।
की कोई नहीं, बीसी की खाली जो भुवनेश्वर उड़ीसा में जो उदयगिरी खंडगिरी केव्स हैं वहां पे स्कल्पचर्स हैं बने हुए केव्स के अंदर, और वो
जी जी।
पेंटेड हैं, वो जैन केव्स हैं और वो
जी
पेंटेड है। खाली वॉल पे पेंटिंग्स एज सच नहीं है जैसे
ठीक है, मुझे दिख गया।
एलोरा में है, लेकिन
जी
वो
जी।
स्कल्पचर्स हैं उन वो पेंट किए हुए हैं, उसका मैंने उल्लेख किया था। वो फर्स्ट
जी
सेंचुरी बीसी की।
अनीता बॉम्बे से कुछ कहना
जी, थैंक
चाहती
यू मैम।
हैं? अनीता जी बॉम्बे से कहना चाहती हैं, अपने को अनम्यूट करें।
जी हाँ बताइए।
अनीता जी बॉम्बे से अनम्यूट करें अपने को।
जी जय जिनेन्द्र, मैं अनीता बैम्बू हूँ,
जी
बॉम्बे से नहीं हूँ।
जी
जी
अच्छा।
मुझे मेरा प्रश्न है, मैम ने कहा था कि जो इंडस वैली की वो सील है जिसमें शिवा को दिखाया है, अ, वो पार्श्वनाथ भी हो सकते हैं, मतलब
आदिनाथ। आदिनाथ।
आदिनाथ, आई एम सॉरी, आदिनाथ भी हो सकते हैं, बट वी डोंट सी जैन तीर्थंकर्स विद मेटेड हेयर।
नहीं, क्योंकि आदिनाथ के तो मैटेड हेयर होते हैं हमेशा।
अच्छा,
आपने देखा होगा
ओके
सब स्कल्पचर्स में, है ना।
Okay, because
यहाँ
we
पे
see mostly the
उनके
curly. Acha,
बाल
acha. Okay, got it,
हैं।
got it. Okay, okay. Thank you.
स्वर्णा जी जैन, स्वर्णा जैन अपने को अनम्यूट करके बोलने क्या चाहते हैं? स्वर्णा जी। हेलो।
जी सुवर्ण जी कृपया अनम्यूट कीजिए, आपको ऑप्शन दिया गया है।
फिर एक इसमें है चैट बॉक्स में एक क्वेश्चन है, जितने ये अनम्यूट करेंगी। वेयर वाज द मेन सेंटर ऑफ जैन स्कूल ऑफ पेंटिंग?
Jai Jinendra ma'am.
जी जी बताइए।
Thank you so much for the insightful lecture and the illustrations. This was very nice. Completely आपने हिस्ट्री से लेके फिलॉसफी भी आपने इसमें बहुत कवर कर ली थी, तो बहुत अच्छा था। मेरा बस एक एक सजेशन है या आई डोंट नो, मे बी मैं आपसे अभी ये कहना चाहूंगी, जैसे आपने एक मेंशन किया था कि जैन्स में ऐसे सुप्रीम बॉडी कोई नहीं है एज अ गॉड, एंड वी ओनली वर्शिप 24 तीर्थंकर्स। तो क्या हम इसे ऐसे कर सकते, पुटअप कर सकते हैं कि देर इज अ डिफरेंट कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ गॉड इन जैन्स? Because otherwise क्या होता है, there are sometimes people think that Jains are Nastic, which is not the case. Whereas we do believe in God, but the only concept in Jains is different, as what is not a doer. God is not the doer, but God do exist and we do believe in God.
बिल्कुल
So बस ये एक suggestion था।
बात बिल्कुल ठीक है। अगर हम स्ट्रिक्टली बात करें, है ना, तो जैन या बुद्धिस्ट दोनों रिलीजन्स जो है नास्तिक है। नास्तिक इन द सेंस, क्या हम ये क्या जो तीर्थंकर है वो कोई गॉडली बीइंग्स हैं? नहीं ना। या कहीं से प्रकट हुए हैं? नहीं ना। वो हमारे और आपके जैसे ही पैदा हुए थे, मनुष्य का उन्होंने जन्म लिया और फिर अपनी तपस्या के कारण फिर उनको जो स्थान मिला तीर्थंकर बने। तो ये तो है सही परिभाषा आस्तिक और नास्तिक की, है ना, कि कोई डिवाइन पावर नहीं है। लेकिन जैसे मैंने बाद में कहा कि जैन आचार्यों और मुनियों ने बहुत सी चीजें जैन धर्म में उनको हिंदू संस्कारों से, हिंदू प्रैक्टिसेस से, रिचुअल से बहुत ज्यादा उनसे प्रभावित भी हुए और उनको सम्मिलित भी किया जैन धर्म में। तो आप देखिए, जो जैन मंदिर है, ठीक है, जैन मंदिर में हम कुछ भी एज सच चढ़ाते नहीं है। हम क्या करते हैं, तीर्थंकर की मूर्ति के जाके आगे बोलते हैं कि फर्स्ट प्रेयर क्या होती है अब जब मंदिर में जाते हैं, कि हम में और आप में कोई भेद नहीं है, और हम चाहते हैं कि हम उन्हीं रास्ते पे अग्रसर हों जिस पे जो जो पाथ आपने चुना है ना। लेकिन हैविंग सेड दैट, human beings are such that we like to do idol worship. तो जो जैन मंदिर का जो वेरी कॉन्सेप्ट है, वो कोई जैन प्रतिमा को अंदर बिठाना नहीं था ओरिजिनली। जो जैन मंदिर का उद्गम कैसे हुआ है, संवसरण के रूप में, जो कैवल्य ज्ञान प्राप्त करने के बाद तीर्थंकरों को जो ज्ञान प्राप्त हुआ और जो संवसरण क्रिएट किया गया इंद्र और दूसरे देवी देवताओं के द्वारा, उसमें जो उन्होंने डिस्कोर्स दिया, जो मंदिरों की संरचना शुरू में खाली इसी को बेस रखते हुए हुई, एंड देन ओवर द सेंचुरीज there were lot of influences from the your surroundings, from the other Hindu temples that were getting built at that time, and slowly हम अपने तीर्थंकर को भी भगवान महावीर ही बोलते हैं, है ना। हम कुछ ऐसे नहीं बोलते कि ये हमारे he is man like us only. So it is a process of many centuries that today we believe कि हम कोई नास्तिक नहीं है, हमारे भी भगवान है। आई टोटली बिलीव इन दैट, उसमें कोई गलत बात नहीं है। लेकिन क्या है, हिस्टोरिकली एंड फिलोसॉफिकली जो तथ्य है उनको आप निगेट नहीं कर सकते, है ना। मेरी खाली यही बात है आपसे कहने।
मैं इसमें थोड़ा सा सम्मिलित होना चाहता हूँ कि ये प्रश्न जो है मैडम का, वो टोटली दार्शनिक प्रश्न है। और आस्तिक और नास्तिक की जो परिभाषाएं दी जाती रही हैं उसमें थोड़ा सा काफी मतभेद है, क्योंकि हम लोग एक परंपरा क्या है कि वैदिक परंपरा में जो वेद को नहीं मानता है वो नास्तिक है। लेकिन खुद वैदिक परंपरा में जो हमारी परंपरा है कि जो पुण्य और पाप को मानता है, जो लोक परलोक को मानता है, उस तरह से वो आस्तिक की परिभाषा दी जाती है आधुनिक काल में। और जैन धर्म, बौद्ध धर्म पूरी तरह से पुण्य पाप, इस लोक परलोक को मानते हैं। चारवाकी एक ऐसा धर्म है जो कि पुण्य पाप, इस लोक परलोक को नहीं मानता है। तो दार्शनिक दृष्टि से अभी जो नई मान्यताएं हैं वो चारवाकी एक प्रकार से नास्तिक है। और जहां तक परमात्मा व ईश्वर की बात है, तो जैन परंपरा सृष्टिकर्ता के रूप में ईश्वर को नहीं मानती है। और जैन परंपरा की अपनी विशेषता है कि आत्मा का ही जो चरमोत्कर्ष है उसको परमात्मा के रूप में मानती है। और हम लोगों के यहाँ जो भी भगवान या मतलब अरहंत या मंदिर में जो वार्षिक की जाती है, तो इन्हीं गुणों की पूजा की जाती है। बंदे तदगुण लब्धये, उनके गुणों की प्राप्ति के लिए।
बहुत सुंदर,
एक परंपरा है और एक ये हमारी दार्शनिक परंपरा है। और कितना इन चित्रों में इनको समावेश किया गया है, इसलिए ये थोड़ा सा अलग प्रश्न हो जाते हैं। इसमें स्वर्णा जी कुछ कहना चाहती हैं और शिल्पा शाह जी। तो स्वर्णा जी आप अनम्यूट करिए अपने आप को, बहुत देर से आप।
स्वर्णा जी
स्वर्णा जी
ने बताया अभी वो क्वेश्चन।
अच्छा, तो अभी शिल्पा शाह है नेक्स्ट।
Hello, yeah, good evening, ma'am. It was a very interesting session, and I would just like to ask us a nice question, which is very important for me. That how would you justify the name when we are writing a research article? Can we use the word Jain painting or Western School of Painting or Gujarati? So, what is
They
the
are
exact
all,
word?
interchangeable. It depends on what is your research topic. Are you going to emphasize on the region? Are you emphasizing on the religion? Or, the school of painting, or the entire just Gujarat area, or the entire Western India? It all depends which part, on what your thesis is based on.
Yeah, mostly my thesis is based on the music seen in the Jain manuscripts.
Okay, so then write Jain paintings, definitely. Yeah.
Jain paintings would be good enough. Thank you, ma'am.
चलिए हम लोग कंक्लूड करते हैं। और अगला जो हमारा एपिसोड होगा उसमें हम, मैडम ने जैसा कि बताया कि डिफरेंट इलस्ट्रेट लाइक कल्प सूत्र, कालकाचार्य कथा, उत्तराध्ययन सूत्र, आदि पुराण, भक्तांबर स्तोत्र, उपदेश माला, यशोधर चरित, शांतिनाथ चरित, संग्रहणी सूत्र, इन ग्रंथों के आधार पर जो चित्र हम लोगों को प्राप्त होते हैं उनका विस्तार सेकंड हमारे लेक्चर में किया जाएगा। तो आप लोग अधिक से अधिक संख्या में जुड़िए और हमारे कार्यक्रम को सफल बनाइए। हम मैम के प्रति हार्दिक आभारी हैं अपनी संस्था की ओर से और आप सभी प्रतिभागियों की ओर से। साथ ही सभी जो जुड़े हुए प्रतिभागी हैं उनके प्रति भी कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करते हैं। हमारे काफी वरिष्ठ लोग भी इसमें जुड़े हुए हैं और हमारा उत्साह बढ़ा रहे हैं। उन सबके प्रति भी हम लोग कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करते हैं इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ में। आज हमारे जीतू भाई साहब को भी इसमें सम्मिलित होना था, लेकिन किन्हीं कारण से वो सम्मिलित नहीं हो पाए हैं। अगले सत्र में हम उनका भी उद्बोधन सुनेंगे बीच में भूमिका के रूप में। सबको जय जिनेन्द्र, नमस्कार, धन्यवाद।